name is Dr. Surabhi Modi Sahai, and I'll be sharing with you broad answers and the answer key of this paper and how the answers could have been hunted from the passage and how you should have gone about reading them. Now, there may be many people who discredit solving the paper. There may be many people who say that, analysis, what is the point? What is the point in giving cutoffs? But we at Clat Possible know the excitement that you face just after the paper and how you want to know what happened. Those who gave the paper are looking at answers. Some of you I know are not very excited to look at answers because you feel now it's over. So to each his or her own. We respect that you do not want to know the analysis or the answer key, and others, there might be curious to know cutoffs, analysis and answer keys. So we respect that as well. The analysis is on our YouTube channel. As you can see, you are feel free to visit it or not visit it. And this analysis is also very important for those who are writing the CLAT 2022 paper, because these learnings are what they will remember in their journey while preparing for CLAT 2022. So keeping in mind all of this, we were very excited to lay our hands on the paper. All of our mentors separately solved the paper under time restrictions so as to see what a student could have done, what some students could have done, what others would have done. And based on those calculations, we of course have predicted these cutoffs. So please feel free to, check our answer key and explanation on our website or listen into this detailed analysis. So let's start with the English section. Now the passages per se were mostly, or at least for English and for critical reasoning, were a mix of passages from current scenario, current events, and other texts. So this year we did not see any sources mentioned, unlike last year, where the paper was meticulous about mentioning sources. But when you read the passages, you knew these were the passages that you have done in your own mocks in Clat Possible, because we also made our mocks with a mix of passages from current sources as well as from traditional reading texts, of economics, philosophy, and literature. So the set that you may have solved could vary, but you can check from the passage which passage and questions we are referring to. So in the first passage that you can see on the screen, it talks about India's response to helping other nations with the vaccine procurement process, and how the first world countries, the developed countries, as you can see, it talks about how the developed countries are basically hoarding vaccines, and their vaccine potential is one where the whole country could be vaccinated 2 times, 3 times. So this is, what this talks about. So let me just quickly choose the pen and show you all these things. So 6 times, 4 times, right? The arguments of public good and global cooperation. So these were some of the keywords have gone out of the window, and advanced countries have turned their backs on the need of poor countries to access vaccine. Now, this is where the term comes in. India has displayed empathy to their needs and has gone ahead and exported these vaccines. So this is what mostly this passage, talks about. Moving ahead, so this passage appreciates how India has been able to help. Now, nevertheless, now this brings in a new turn. Nevertheless, India's approach only reinforces the need of having coordinated global COVID-19 efforts under control. This praises India's attitude, right? But of course, it talks about how, India might have backlash because its own country is not still properly vaccinated. So these were 2-3 main points over here in this passage. So if we go to the questions. The first question is, which of the following best describes the purpose? Naturally, the purpose of this passage is to talk about a global effort, which we underlined here, to battle COVID-19. So naturally, the passage has to talk about the global effort. Right, so to encourage vaccine nationalism, no. Vaccine nationalism is what the author is talking against. How advanced countries are talking about vaccine nationalism, hoarding it. It is to discourage vaccine nationalism and encourage global cooperation, as you can see from the parts that I underlined. So that will be option B. The term inoculation process, as it is used, naturally it is artificially inducing immunity. Right? So what is inoculation? That means vaccinating. So it's not production of vaccines. As we can see, vaccines have been procured by different countries to inoculate. That means to generate immunity for the people. That's why they are doing it. So even if you knew the meaning of inoculation, you could have marked this answer. Moving on. Advance purchase contracts of vaccines are premised on the hopes that, so if you go back and read this part, in the first line, the author says, these countries could vaccinate their population many times, as you can see the third line here, with the expectation that an early vaccination will bring back normalcy. Can you see this? So why are they inoculating their public many times? To bring back normalcy. So that would be, which answer here? Basically, option A, bringing back normalcy. So with whatever question that is asked over here, advanced purchase contracts, etc., whatever question has been asked over here, what you have to do is, you have to look for that line and read a little before and a little after. So we went back, we read that line. We, of course, marked it also over here. So we read advanced purchases line over here. And now why did we do it? So that we could get an idea of where or which context it has been written. So naturally, these countries have taken advanced purchase contracts to be able to go back to normalcy and push economic growth. So both these things are written together. So whatever context is established in the question, you just have to go back, look for that context in the passage and read a little before and a little after. You will know why it has been stated. So when we read a little before and a little after, we got the answer. Now coming to the last two questions of the first passage. The author cautions that India's approach could be negative because, so it is because its own people are not vaccinated. So naturally, India's approach would be negative because of people from India. Hence, again, the answer will be option D. And among sustainable development goals, the third goal reads, ensure healthy lives and promote well-being for all ages. Now, reversal of the sustainable development goal. Reversal of the sustainable development goal would be naturally the fact that global cooperation have gone out of the window. This is also against sustainable development. You're only worried about yourself. They have turned their back on the need of poor countries, is again opposite. And the advanced contracts made by advanced countries for purchasing and vaccinating their populations shows that they are not concerned about the underdeveloped or poor countries. So they just want to go after their own vaccination and get back on their own feet without a sustainable goal of poor countries. So this again would be all of the above, option D. So this here was more of a parallel reasoning question where they showed you the principle that they wanted you to look at. The principle is sustainable development goal, and what sentences from the passage oppose it or what sentences from the passage are for it. So again, a question type that we have been doing a lot in our classes. Now comes the Sherlock Holmes question. There is a little excerpt from A Scandal in Bohemia. And this excerpt talks about how Watson ends up and Sherlock Holmes talks about, like in most of Conan Doyle's books and novels, Sherlock Holmes, looks at a person and talks about where that person has been, what all has happened. So the same thing is happening here. And Watson comes in and comes to the chamber, which had formerly been in part my own, shows that Watson shared this home with Sherlock Holmes, which is one of the questions you will see ahead, right? And then later on, the author compares Holmes with Father Brown, who shows sympathy and empathy, and also with Hercule Poirot, Agatha Christie's Belgian lead detective, Hercule Poirot, who is shown to be a patient listener and solves cases by filling in the blanks or missing links. So 3 styles: empathy, sympathy, cold reasoning. Here it says Sherlock finds the criminal by starting from the outside, relying on science, experimental method, and deduction. So these contrasts have been shown and questions have been asked on this. So what can you infer? This question we already discussed, that Watson used to live with Holmes, right? And that question is option B, question 7. Again, it is evident that for solving cases, Father Brown relies basically on the ability to sympathize with the criminal. So it's not that he has sympathetic thoughts about criminals. It is not that he has sympathetic approach towards all people in the crime. He has a sympathetic analysis by sympathizing with the mindset of the criminal, what the criminal would have thought. So that would make the answer as C. Right? That would that would make the answer as A. So it is evident that Father Brown relies naturally on the sympathetic process of the criminal. So let's go back and check it here. Sympathy that enable him to imagine and feel as criminals do, right? I had thought about exactly how a thing like that could be done and in what style or state of mind a man could really do it, right? So I knew who he was. So this ability to sympathize, sympathize and empathize and go into the crime helps Father Brown solve the cases. For the 3 detectives mentioned, what is not given as a essential factor, naturally it is sensitivity, Father Brown, critical thinking, Sherlock Holmes, patience, Hercule Poirot, forgiving nature. A will be the answer in this case. Poirot uses the art of finding the mismatch in the story. Finding the mismatch in the story is given there. So that's answer D. Incorrigible is the antonym of. Incorrigible means one who won't change. So habitual is a meaning, right? Incurable is a meaning. But a person who will change, who will repent, is the opposite. So answer will be C. Coming to the third passage here. Now this passage basically talks about schools, technology, and how they have brought, the COVID pandemic has brought about a gap in schools and technology, right? So the author starts by saying that yes, technology can be helpful, but random internet search is not going to prove anything, and then goes to cite Noam Chomsky over here. Noam Chomsky says that you cannot pursue any kind of inquiry just from surfing the internet. You have to know the goal. There has to be a clear framework, right? And naturally there cannot be any hegemonic techno-managerial solutions. So what is this techno-managerial solutions to the heterogeneity of students? So heterogeneity of students basically means diversity. So there cannot be a one-stop solution, right? Now, then comes the concept of functional of schools in the next paragraph, that schools should not be trivialized. So this paragraph talks about how people have focused on unschooling or deschooling, but the author believes that even those people who had very iconoclastic means very diverse methods, they also went to school. So schooling, according to this passage, is extremely important. And then the author brings in this nostalgia of school, that you never forget your school, the trophies. Of course, the author agrees that the schools maintain a status quo. That status quo means they maintain things as they are. They will not diversify. But yes, the point over here is that, still schools are important. This is the bottom line that the author says. So let's go to the questions. Which one of the following is the author trying to suggest, quoting Noam Chomsky? Now the author talks about technology used in a structured manner. No. Basically, Noam Chomsky talks about how any form of inquiry, we had underlined it, is through a clear framework. This is what Noam Chomsky was saying. So answer will be B over here, clearly given from the passage. Which of the following is not a premise of author's argument in favor of need for schools? So not means schools provide socialization, you make friends, that is given in the passage. The institution has shown perseverance, that means over the years, things have gone and come, but schools have not changed. This line is also mentioned in the passage. If you go back, you will check this line given. The institution has survived since ancient times. So this line is also given in the passage, right? Then the current pandemic has proved that parents and all want to go to school. That has also been given. Random surfing is something which is not in favor of schools, right? It is spoken of in a very different context of internet and technology and education. So answer will be D. Linguistic cultural heterogeneity, of course, means diversity. So unity you can remove. Answer will be C over there. What is not the learning outcome from the pandemic? So again, this line is given. Parents want schools to start. Naturally, technology is undoubtedly and absolutely useful in education. This is not a learning, this thing from the pandemic. Yes, technology may be used to mediate between schools, but only technology is what the passage has written against. So technology can be a go-between, but just technology alone, in fact, shows the need for schools. This is what the passage is about. That this experience of the pandemic has shown to us the need for actual physical schools with infrastructure. The author categorically states, do not think of schools as wasting infrastructure. And symbiotic relationship is what technology and schools have to show. This is mutually beneficial. Answer will be option C. Coming to the next passage. Now this passage talks about strategy and planning. So when you read paragraph 1, all through paragraph 1 and then through paragraph 2, you will realize that the passage talks about planning, and Benjamin Franklin talks about planning, failing to plan, and you will feel that the author is actually talking about planning. Many of the students would have done this. But the actual passage, if you remember any of my critical reasoning classes, the actual passage begins from this word, however. Right? So numerous entrepreneurs have shown faith in strategy. This paragraph also talks about strategy, planning, Best airports, astronomical missions are also on strategies. However, and I have told you in all the RC classes, the moment you see however, you should know that there is something amiss. Now the actual passage begins. Whatever was stated earlier is over. However, written by the author shows that the author is changing stance. So after, however, they believe that any amount of planning and strategies can fail while coming to unexpected situations. So strategy is okay, planning is okay, but these can fail when faced with unexpected situation. Then comes in the example of Steve Jobs. So there is a question on Steve Jobs and Benjamin Franklin. Naturally, Steve Jobs is saying the opposite of Benjamin Franklin, that idea and execution is nothing. The actual execution is what matters. Bill Gates also says unhappy customers are a great source of learning. How we can handle fickle-minded consumers is what matters. And there comes out the example of extreme planning with New Coke, but New Coke failed miserably. So this passage is about a balance of planning, strategy, and execution. So execution is basically the key over here. Execution is the key word now of the passage. So many people would have thought that the passage is about planning. In fact, the passage is about execution, as noticed by the word however, and this is your biggest learning in RC. If you remember any RC class, I have stressed on the fact of however, but, and nevertheless. So the passage can be best termed as, so this passage basically is expository. Now, I remember before the Clat paper, in our mock, we had given expository, descriptive. These were the two words that we had used in our mock. Many kids came back and said how to distinguish between them. So this is expository. Where expository means explanatory, where the author gives you examples, gives you what other people think, and a whole discussion. Expository means something which can be a part of a discussion. It is not just a description. It's not describing to you the meaning of planning or execution. It is discussing. It is engaging the audience. So the answer will be A. What is the main purpose of the passage? Is the main purpose of the passage planning and strategy, right? Or the fact that execution is as important as planning and strategy. So the main purpose is not planning and strategy. The main purpose is execution. And therefore, your answer will be B. While the passage shows you hurdles in execution, but the purpose is not to show you hurdles. The purpose is to show you how execution is the key in the success of brands. What did we learn from the failure of New Coke? Basically, we learned from the failure of New Coke the fact that just a strategy does not help. You have to know what the customers want, right? So changes and habits should not be taken for granted. The loyal customers failed the New Coke. So you planned, you strategized, but you did not take into account loyalty. Steve Jobs, is it similar? No, it is different from Benjamin Franklin. Answer will be B. This is what I showed you before and after, however. And consumer is the capricious weather. This is a comparison of consumer with weather. So will it be simile or will it be metaphor? We had discussed this in great detail. Simile will be as and like. Metaphor will be without as and like. So answer will be metaphor. And of course, the demands are changing. A can be removed stagnant. So even if you do not know simile metaphor, eliminate A. But between B, C, D, all three can fit in. So the first blank will have to decide the answer here. And you have to know that it is a metaphor. Answer will be option C. And finally, we come to jobs. Now the last passage talks about the new nature of jobs as can be shown by the Michael and Susan Delph Foundation. But the author's actual central theme over here is that how this new framework of jobs needs the support of the government. How does this new framework of job need the support of the government? It needs the governments to help employees get a sense of security by improvements in public health, education, insurance, and food security, so that their irregular employment can be managed better. So the author says that this new setup cannot create full-time employees and give them security. So this job has to be done by the government. So this is what the whole passage talks about. 21st is a fact-based question where the answer will be all of the above. This foundation has shown there is a fundamental shift in the nature of work. It predicts massive rise in the world's GDP, right? And gig jobs are what have increased over the years. So if you go back, all these things are found here. Predicts 90 million gig jobs just from 8 million, contributing to more than 250 billion and an additional 1.24% to India's GDP. And of course, they are very, very different from other jobs. 22nd, what can be inferred as a caution by the author? Now, in this question, we have to see what the government has to do, right? Now, B is not what the author is cautioning against. The author is not also really saying that if the gig is not strengthened, economy will fail, right? We are not going to create a socio-political framework that support gig jobs. We have to just ensure management of public health insurance and food security and anxieties of gig workers. So the author is not saying that it will impede innovation. The author just says that if you think gig workers will be regular employees, then it is not practical. So B is an exaggeration, C is an exaggeration. It's not as if gig economy will fail. It is still going on. What the author is only saying is that government has to just ensure that basic things are provided to these guys. So answer will be option A. In the context of the passage, gig economy is short term or free labor market, nature of work has shifted, and there are a lot of startups. So it will be all of the above. The tone of the passage is hopeful, as can be seen from the last line of the passage. Hence, answer is D. And what is the concern? The concern is basically, the fact that the nature of the job is temporary. The concern here is not lack of education and infrastructure. No, that's not a concern. The authors only ask the government to be particular about it. Concern is basically that these employees feel insecure because they are not in full-time jobs. So they have to be made less insecure. So answer will be option B. Coming to the last passage, which is based on South Africa and this Commission of South Africa, which is the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. The author basically talks about how the Truth and Reconciliation Commission somehow failed to live up to its ideals and it got into status quo. So it became a political thing rather than a change-driven thing. This is what the author's main concern is in this passage, and the author tries to show that main concern. So status quo, as has been used in the second passage here, status quo basically means something which is already there, right? So that would be option B, status quo. 27th, what is the tone of the author? The author is critical. The author is not compassionate or threatening. The author is just critical, talking about how this commission did not live up to certain things. So these were two tone-based questions that you got in your paper, right? What is not the broader concern of the TRC? The broad concern of TRC is to deal with crimes through truth, to acknowledge past suffering, but it is not its concern to become a political strategy, to emerge as a political strategy. No, it is basically to promote a future based on concerns of social justice, to come out with the truth and to stick to the truth. What happened was TRC became political, but that was not a concern. So answer will be option C. What is least likely to be inferred from the passage? The TRC made earnest efforts to protect human rights is what is going to be not going to be inferred. What is inferred is A, they ignored the broad concerns, right? They lacked agenda, the subcommittees. There's a whole paragraph on this. And the fact that they made earnest efforts to protect human rights is not what has emerged. They have just tried to paper over it, right? And D is also inferred, or rather stated by the author, that they lack the desire to move ahead and to drive change. What is the meaning of amnesty? So these were 3 word meaning based questions which you could have easily done. Amnesty means to give official pardon. You had to know the meaning, right? So around the whole English section would have taken an average and above average person to spend about 26 minutes to be able to do all the passages, right? But if your speed was a little slow, you could have done 4 passages easily with almost 90% accuracy. So a good score here would be in the range of 22 to 25, but a score which all of you should have been able to clear the cutoff, overall cutoff that you would need would be around